Hello, everyone. This is Saturday morning, December 29th, 2018, and we welcome you all to our Bible study. We are recording today from the Plainfield Christian Science Church Independent, Plainfield, New Jersey, the United States of America, and we're so happy you could all join us. And today our moderator is Mike from New York.
Thank you. The quote today is from the First Church of Christ Scientist in Miscellany by Miriam Baker Eddy. It's from the foreword, and in reviewing it this morning, I felt I should have added the first paragraph to give it context, so I am going to do that. In these stirring times of church building, when the attention of the whole world is fixed on Christian Science, when the growth and prosperity of the cause are matters of general wonderment and frequent comment, when the right hand of fellowship is being extended to this people by other Christian denominations, when popularity threatens to supersede persecution, as well for earnest and loyal Christian scientists to fortify themselves against the mesmerism of personal pride and self-adulation by recalling the following historical facts. And there were 5 points, and I'm going to go to number 3. That no one on earth today, aside from Mrs. Eddy, knows anything about Christian Science except as he has learned it from her and from her writings. And Christian scientists are honest only as they give her full credit for this extraordinary work. 4. That Mrs. Eddy organized the First Church of Christ Scientists in Boston, Massachusetts, devised its church government, originated its form of public worship, wrote its church manual and tenets, and always has been and is now its guide, guardian, leader, and wise and unerring counselor.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's now. I like that. And it's now is guide, guardian, leader.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, very important we understand her correctly, we respect her, we see her place as the woman in the apocalypse. In retrospection and introspection, she wrote a whole chapter on plagiarism. The first paragraph in which she says, the various forms of book borrowing without credit spring from this ill-concealed question in mortal mind, who shall be greatest? This error violates the law given by Moses. It tramples upon Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. It does violence to the ethics of Christian Science. And then it is proverbial that dishonesty retards spiritual growth and strikes at the heart of truth. So the importance to give her all the credit. Understand we don't know the science unless we've thoroughly studied what she says, her works.
And have an appreciation for her life. Which is why prose works is so important to read, study.
You might find this interesting if you don't already know it. The author of what Mike just read was Louis Strang, S-T-R-A-N-G, and he was out of the organization in the early 20s. I don't know if he was excommunicated or if he just left it, but he and his wife were both out of that. And I know that from a treatise by Stella Haddon Alexander, a student of Augusta Stetson, where she was in touch with the Strangs, and it's recorded in there. So if you need a verification of this, the Strangs were out of the organization in the early 20s.
Thank you.
Most of the good workers were out of the organization.
Yeah, right.
Because litigation divided the cause, the field, into 2 camps. Those who saw it clearly as the work of the devil and opposed the takeover by the board of the trustees of the publishing society, and the other half didn't see it clearly and went along with the board. So the movement lost a lot of its best workers as a result of the great litigation.
And a lot of this history we didn't know at all until we became excommunicated. I'd also like to read, this is from Miscellaneous Writings, page 254. Envy, the great red dragon of this hour, would obscure the light of science, take away a third part of the stars from the spiritual heavens, cast them to the earth. This is not science. Per contra, it is the mortal mind's sense, mental healing on a material basis, hurling its so-called healing at random, filling with hate its deluded victims, or resting in silly peace upon the laurels of headlong human will. Quote, what shall therefore the Lord of the vineyard do? He will come and destroy the husbandman, and will give the vineyard unto others. End quote. Mrs. Eddy saw all this. She saw it during her time. These were warnings. But this is why, too, over and over again, she says what she based science and health on. What were the things in the Bible she based it on?
Spiritual interpretation.
The 10 Commandments, the 91st Psalm, the Sermon on the Mount.
And the book of Revelation.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. That's why we must know that. We must live it. We must turn to our Bible frequently. It will keep us clear and safe as we get into this revelation business today, because the biggest part of so-called evil is, as Eddie says, lust and hypocrisy. Hypocrisy to keep you unaware of what's going on, saying one thing and doing other things. So we'll get into that. Anyone else on this quote? Thank you, Mike. Good one. And thank you for explaining the origin.
Yes, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. You go ahead.
I want to say thank you also because at the end of the foreword, it says the Christian Science Journal, May 1906. So I was kind of wondering if that was, but she wrote so much that I assumed it was her writing. But the other thing also that Science and Health is based upon is Mrs. Eddy's personal experience from all those cited parts of the Bible, because when one reads some of the common points and the contrasts between what she had written in like the 1875 and some of the early editions compared to this latest edition of 1910, a lot of the first editions were in the first person. In other words, she says, I experienced this, I experienced the portals of death. So you know it definitely was her experience of what God was showing her.
Thank you.
Okay, so we ready to move on to the rest? Okay, topic is Understanding Revelation 12, 4 through 10. Bible readings were again Revelation 12, emphasis on verses 1 through 10. And the additional readings were from Irving Tomlinson's book on Revelation and Reverend Kratzer's book on Revelation. And I do want to thank both Linda and Tom for some very wonderful advice, critique, and help organizing this Bible study.
Thank you, Mike. Questions are good ones, so thank you.
And that's where I have great thanks for the two of them. Okay, so question number 1. What is the dragon? What is it ready? And what is it ready to devour? This is from Revelation 12:4 in Science and Health, pages 563 to 565.
Which symbolizes a lie, as Mrs. Eddy says. The belief that substance, life, and intelligence can be material. And it's the sum total of human error.
Thank you.
The ten horns of the dragon typify the belief that matter has power of its own, and that by means of an evil-minded matter, the 10 Commandments can be broken. That's Mrs.
And that quote that I just read from Miss Delaney's writing said that the dragon of today was envy. So you can take all those things of the carnal mind, and that's what it is. But envy is certainly a very, very wicked one that has people fighting and jealous and something to be so much guarded against.
Eustace also talks about the dragon giving authority to physical power, which is the beast, and mental power, which is false prophet. That was interesting.
Thank you.
So what does Mrs. Eddy say the dragon is? She thought it was important enough she put it in her glossary, page 593. Red dragon, error, fear, inflammation, sensuality, subtlety, animal magnetism, envy, revenge. Covers a lot of ground, doesn't it?
Yep. I went through what Mrs. Eddy says on those pages, and she gives 563 to 64, she gives characteristics of it. And we need to be aware of this, because it is definitely operating today. And many people are mesmerized and blinded by it. And don't ever think that you're above being mesmerized or blinded by it, because the minute you think that, you will be. So, he says one of the characteristics is very subtle. The talking serpent typifies mortal mind, and it's more subtle than any beast of the field. Very subtle. So it comes to you, we used to be taught here, it comes to you as your own thinking or something very plausible, gets you to believe it. Subtle, not out there in the open. And then it does evil in the name of good. It does evil in the name of good. To me, I think of human goodness, where it seems good. It seems, so kind and loving and good, but evil is being accomplished. If it's not divine good, if it's not based on principle and law and rules, love has to have principle, principle must have love, then there's a very, very, very large percentage that it is evil hiding behind this mask of doing good.
Any examples today of that going on? Did anybody think of?
Everything.
About the media that puts forth what it considers to be facts, but twisted to its own personal view, and intentionally omitting things that would be really worked right and honest. To be good.
Yeah.
Really inciting very seriously bad emotion.
Yes.
think a lot of the human good going on all over, in a way, is really preventing people from waking to what is within them to govern themselves.
Absolutely right. That's a good impersonal way to put it. But at any time, that things are being done for people where they get dependent on that thing and they lose their dependency on God, then evil is being done in the name of good. Oh, we're so kind and loving. But trust in me. I don't know if you've ever seen that Jungle Book, the original Walt Disney. The serpent is hypnotizing the little boy, and he sings a song, trust in me, trust in me. His head is waving all around, and the little boy's eyes are spinning. Well, so it is. Trust in me, whether it's Materia Medica, whether it's a huge government that's going to supply all your needs. Trust in me. That's what I think of. Higher education, that, again, if you get into it unthinkingly, they're teaching our children things that aren't good. Trust in me. And people do. They have a false trust. So, then the next was spiritual wickedness in high places. What is that? The characteristics of evil.
Well, look at the Roman Catholic Church.
Well, there you go. And look at the Christian Science Church. I'm going to have Gary now read from the Dixon letter. And this is being written by the person Casper Dernbury.
Casper Dernbury. My experience in Christian Science is full of events. In the 3 larger cities of America in which I have lived, my work has made me acquainted with the practical operation in the field, and I have found that the so-called, quote, black magic works very widely among Christian scientists. I have found the cause of this subtle error to be the fact that the average Christian scientist lacks the right knowledge of how and why animal magnetism works. I have prayed for a long time that I might be able to put into a letter to you the record of my knowledge and experience as to what is to become of the seeming discord in our churches and the unchristian methods of so many practitioners all over the field. Also, the unhealthy morals of many so-called prominent or leading Christian scientists. As a loyal student of Mrs. Eddy's works and a member of the Mother Church, I cannot ignore the facts or trend of events. For if this hypocrisy shall continue under the guise of Christian Science, I ask you, what will happen? What happened in the early Christian church? It became a material organization, and it seemingly flourishes still, but without any foundation whatsoever and bound for dissolution.
Spiritual wickedness in high places
Is the humanization, the materialization of God's Word.
One of the things when I first came and started reading about this faith cure, I had to really think about it because I was trying to go back and, were some of my healings that I experienced outside of this new understanding of Christian Science faith cure. And what I realized is when I went back to the healings that did not bring me closer to God, did not change my character and make it more obedient and more following the principles of God's law. It didn't heal the envy, fear, hate. And so when I would go back to some of these healings, I found that it did not have that moral accompaniment to me, and that seemed to me partly an indication. Because when I get healings in this church, there's also deep moral changes.
Thank you very much. It's interesting in reading this book, Christian Healer, Mary Baker Eddy, and all these instantaneous healings she did. with her healings, there was a change in the morality of the person. And that is the ultimate. It's true. But somewhere later on, she said the healing became much more difficult. That was because of the opposition of animal magnetism. At first, no one knew it was there, and she was just doing it, going around healing everyone quickly. And then now, of course, we've got the huge materia medica. So however we get it, be it slow or fast, up to thee, we're getting it in the right way, the right form of it, the true form. And that is not just the physical healing, because I still hear people, well, how come it's taking so long? Well, have you changed it all? No, I haven't. I'm still going around with my old beliefs. I'm still scared of everything, and I still have a personal sense of everybody, but I want my healing. So, well, sometimes it takes a little while to cleanse oneself. Okay. The next was animal instincts. Impel them to devour each other. That's, in the millennium, the lion will lay down with the lamb. And that's my vision. That's the vision of Daniel, who wasn't eaten by the lions. But I was talking to Jeremy about some of these wildlife movies, which are, beautiful, but then you get into the beautiful animals, but the next thing you know, they're devouring each other very viciously, and I don't like to watch that. But that's what goes on in the human Adam dream, and it's what she's saying, it what goes on with people. Kill each other viciously. And then, along with that, cast out devils through Beelzebub. Now, what is that?
That seems again trying to do good with evil.
Thank
An
you.
example would be hypnotism.
Thank you.
That's what faith cure, so-called, is all about.
This also goes along
In the
with
human mind.
the human mind,
Yeah.
which will kill morally and physically. It also wants to cast out devils. In other words, look at somebody else, find a fault, and you need to fix this, you need to do it my way, and let me manipulate and control it all the time. People, the nature of mortal mind to incite people to rule over other people, dominate and control them. That kills the morality. I mean, it's a godless picture of God reigning and controlling.
Thank you.
I think so that it's very subtle, because you hear these wonderful things about, like the Druid healers, for example, and then being in Ireland at a site, it turns out they did the human sacrifice. So people are worshiping things that they have no clue about what the background in it is.
Thank you very much. A lot of it is this New Age thing. You envision what you want. You project it, and then it appears, but there's no God in it. And that's why people are still turning to all of this stuff. The tarot cards and other things seem to accomplish things, but there's no God in it. It's certainly what Hitler did. And Hitler was a Satanist. He studied it and he practiced it, as did those around him. I mean, to me, it's like voodoo. You get a doll and stick pins in it or something. So, and it is going on today rapidly, and some naive Christian scientists fall into it thinking it's Christian science, but that's only because they haven't studied the textbook. And that's a great danger, not to know your textbook and the Bible.
And the history of Mrs. Eddy, that's correct.
Yes.
They fell for the subtlety.
The subtlety of it.
Because once you fall for the subtlety, then in ascending order, these other things we've been describing, they build up one upon another, and they're coming if you fall for the subtlety at the beginning.
Yes, thank you.
And much of it is done in well-meaning ignorance.
Yeah, right. Well-meaning ignorance. So it couldn't be anything worse.
Meanwhile, you can envision the bad too. If you can envision the beautiful house, then you can, with the human mind, you can envision the bad too. Then don't complain.
That's it. That's absolutely right. And then they're worried, and they never find peace. They're always fearful because there's no God in it. And so all of that stuff still remains within them, the fear, the negativity, the doubt.
I think it comes back to what you were saying about even those beautiful animal shows, but the part they don't show is even some of the herbivores are vicious to their own kind and drive them out of the herd, and then they're left for the predators because, they're very individually, because it's a herd ability to fight off the predators that protects them.
Thank you. Yeah, it's the bestial ferocity Mrs. Eddy talks about, which is the wrong concept of God creatures. Okay, then the next was it charges the spiritual idea with error's own nature and methods. What is that?
Blame the people that are doing righteous for the wrong.
That's right.
They're doing it.
Yep. And they speak up real fast. They're doing it, so they speak up real fast. So look over there. Look what he's doing. He's doing the one. He's doing bad. So everyone, it's like the magic show where they commit the magic because they get you to look somewhere else, and while you're focused on somewhere else, they're doing all kinds of things. So you're focused on the innocent person who's being accused, and in the meantime, the one who's actually doing it is up to all kinds of stuff.
And it's right in the Bible where they accused Christ Jesus of doing his great works through Beelzebub.
Yes, thank you. That's a perfect example. And yet they were doing it.
And we see it every day in the so-called news, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Today.
Mm-hmm.
And they did it without the healings.
Yeah.
This shows the depravity, the wickedness, as well as the stupidity of the human mind. Human mind can't think an original thought. So what it does is it accuses others of what it is guilty of. And it is threatened by a pure, good thought. So it attacks the pure and good thought most viciously, accusing it of what it is guilty of. I see it in the news every frickin' day. Pardon my French. It is going on daily, hourly, around us. Think about it. And it's getting more and more aggressive.
And more blatant.
That's why it's so important. Sorry.
I just said it's a good thing it's getting more and more out in the open. Go ahead, Dale, what were you going to say?
It's so important to know God, because to know the good, to know the original, the only, then you can easily detect the wrong.
Exactly.
Thank you.
It's the only way to know God. That's it.
That's it. Then you know the counterfeit. And you see, all of these things we're talking about is the breaking of the Ten Commandments. Certainly, thou shalt not covet, thou shalt not bear false witness, certainly the first commandment. Go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say then, sorry about that. I was going to say, but then you have to also be honest about it, because when you go back through the history and find out that they were sacrificing people you can't put a good twist on it and say, oh, but they did this good, because underlying that good was the absolute biggest evil.
Yeah, it's always good to be aware of the facts, but also be mainly aware of how this evil works.
And go back to the cause. If it's from the human so-called mind, it's wrong. If it's God-directed, if it's the divine.
You all recommended Whoso readeth, let him understand in the Eustace book. And it's very deep and helping me a lot to see that absolute evil is what is behind all the appearance of evil. So as we handle absolute evil, then we impersonalize the rest of it. And I've had people say, oh, the main evil is Scientology. Oh, the main evil is this. Oh, the main evil is that. Well, all those are effects of the one absolute evil, which can only be overcome as we understand the allness of divine love. This is what I'm getting from the Eustace article, and thank you for recommending that. I've underlined a lot of things before, but I'm getting much more out of it now.
Good.
Yeah, the Eustace covers it. Yeah. No matter what is the problem, it's always malicious animal magnetism. Whatever the problem is, it's not person, place, or thing. That we must always remember. Always animal magnetism, wearing a face. Okay, the next one is incites mortals to kill morally and physically, even their fellow mortals. We know what it means to kill physically, but what does it mean to kill morally?
Like this mob rule that surrounds people and attacks them verbally or their person.
Yes.
Calling them out for things without proof.
Yes.
Makes me think of the word demoralize, too. And before coming to this church, I never realized that the word moral was in there. Having attacking people in that way so that they just feel they have nothing left is a horrible thing.
Well, yeah, and they'll accuse someone of something, that happened a long time ago, and there's no way that you can prove it happened or didn't happen. And then it casts a shadow over someone. It's a very, very wicked thing to do. And that's
Mrs. Eddy writes about it, too, when they did it to her, the things that they said. She writes in prose works and many things, and she talks very strongly about it.
Thank you.
Yes, because it happens all the time, doesn't it?
And again, it's the preying on the innocent.
But also moral degeneration, through pornography and all these things that children are seeing. It's as if it's okay, and it's not okay. It degenerates morally.
Thank you.
Isn't there a difference really between moral assassination and character assassination? I mean, one is trying to get somebody to become immoral, and another one is trying to tell lies about them, right?
Well, yes, but one can be used to accomplish the other. The attempt of character assassination is to discourage the person in their work or make it more difficult for them to get good work or to keep their friends or whatever. And the objective of it is to discourage them so much that they will compromise their own morals. That's one way of accomplishing moral assassination. The other way, another way, is to just seduce them.
Yes.
Appeal to their lower propensities and find a weak spot. There are a lot of different ways to accomplish moral assassination.
And that book that I mentioned that Kratzer recommends, called The Beast, that's what it is about. Those two ways of attacking, actually, this person who is a good person in government, to get them one way or the other. Sometimes it is blackmail. Maybe they did do something wrong once in their lives, so they blackmail them until they get them totally under their control. This has to be taught. All right? Well, I know maybe some of you are squirming in your seats because you don't want to hear such things, but it must be taught. You've got to know this. If you don't, you're just a sitting duck, like so many, and you get swept away because you don't know what the heck is going on. You've got to know it. It's nothing to fear. It's something to see and then see its nothingness and prove its nothingness. But that must be done. It's not, God is love, God is love. Someone was it was Parsons just talking about that. That people who just want to blanket it all, oh, it's all God is love, everything's great. It's irritating now to me. I used to be one of those. But it's irritating because they're not handling a cotton-picking thing.
And they go after the wrong person.
Yes. They're putties in the hands of schemers, as Dick Dal Young says. Mrs. Eddy, somewhere I was reading this recently, she said the only reason to have any kind of teaching of science, other than her textbook, is learn these things, how to handle animal magnetism. And she used to do it privately. And so, well, now nothing's private. So it's all out there. Anyway.
I think to be glamored by human praise also is one of the ways you can really corrupt someone morally.
Thank you. Those are good ways.
Well, that's the way you can be corrupted, yes.
Yes.
It's the person who praises you in some way that gets you that is doing the corrupting.
And they'll pull you in, telling you how wonderful you are, how great you are, and
yeah.
But you're right. That's a big red flag. Someone tries to praise me. That's the time to watch out.
Mrs. Eddy says we must not be glamoured. Glamored.
Yes.
Yeah.
It makes you feel uncomfortable.
Yes.
And what did Jesus say to the guy that called him good master?
Only God is good.
Yeah, he rebuked him.
Yeah. And tear or triumph harms, she says in her hymn. And triumph is often the worst because you get all puffed up. You can sometimes see people's heads just, getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Pretty soon they're floating around in the sky, and they're just duped to be shot.
And one form of bad praise is money.
That's right.
Yeah, well, certainly that's a way to corrupt, offer you money and offer you, you're going to be president of this, to do, all kinds of... But if you don't do what I want, you're going to be off with your head. And if I can't get to you, maybe I'll try to get to your family. Wickedness is not nice. You can't be naive, and you can't avoid it. You've got to know how it operates. Otherwise, you become part of it. Okay, the next.
Because it is operating. Can't sweep it under the rug. Once we get rid of all evil, then we'll be okay. All right.
And we're working on that.
So the battle goes on. Yeah.
We're working on it, and that's why we do our watches, and that's why in our prayers we handle these things and mentally destroy them. As Florence said so beautifully on Wednesday, the nothingness and the powerlessness of evil. That's the ultimate. But if you don't know how it's operating and you just go around, it's nothing and it's powerless, it's darn irritating because you're just not doing it.
No, dear, don't voice error. No, dear, don't voice error. I got that in the church a lot of times.
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
And what did Mrs. Eddy say? Tell the truth about what?
The lie.
The lie.
Exactly. Because when it's exposed,
you can trample it down.
An error ignored grows worse, as he said.
Yes.
Exactly. It wants to be left alone.
And
But
it's
once
a cat,
you expose
cat
it,
amongst the pigeons.
yeah, once you expose it, it's 2/3 destroyed, right? The remaining third
Destroys itself.
Enemy magnetism has no power, but we must handle it as though it had all power. That's in the Blue Book.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
I acknowledge your claims, but I denounce your power.
Yes.
Okay, now another characteristic is that it hates without a cause. So what does that mean?
Makes me think of, we had this lesson recently, the enemies without a first offense. Nice and help. Like just that, the fact that you think somebody might be in your way, dog eat dog mentality.
Oh. Thank you. Yeah, you said that, you felt that was true in the town you came from.
Absolutely. Yeah, everybody always very worried that you are going to take their job or something from them.
And you haven't even done anything.
And it's, I don't know, I think that kind of stuff is really funny to think about coming from me, because I usually don't want anything anyone else has. and most people don't want to do the work I'm doing either, so that's fine. I'm in the right place.
Well, and they'll hate your success. They'll hate, maybe you're doing well or whatever they perceive. They hate you just for no real reason.
But isn't it the nature of error to hate truth? The nature of envy to hate gratitude. Nature of evil to hate good. The nature of the human mind to just hate.
People also hate others that are happy all the time.
Right, but it's
joyous.
It's not person, place, or thing.
And I think Gary is so right, because the only reason there is all that hate and envy and all that stuff is because of the goodness of God. It's simply opposing the goodness of God in a impersonal, in a nothingness way within our own minds.
Yeah, and it's trying to present itself as something, as a person. It's trying to present itself as real. And in the presence of a spiritually minded person, it's threatened because it's doomed to destruction. So it hates whatever could possibly destroy it. Love destroys it. The truth destroys it. Life, divine life, eternal, destroys it.
We had, our watch on Thursday about all these Christians being killed. Now, it's an unreasonable hatred toward Christianity. If you really knew anything about Christianity, if you knew it was the Ten Commandments, Sermon on the Mount, you wouldn't hate it. But the era just hates it. And unfortunately, they're teaching our children to also hate it. And this is what we have to guard against. And again, in the Dixon letter, he says, the Eastern Order, in incredible arrogance and ambition, works even to hypnotize governments, jealousy setting the pace for its own Eastern civilization to be foremost, and enviously hating Western or Christian civilization with the purpose of destroying it. Don't think that that's not going on,
well,
friends.
That's right now. So.
Yes. Don't, oh, it's so loving, we all love each other, it's great. That's the thing we got to guard against. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of Christian scientists have, not the true science ever, but this false concept of it has become that. In the meantime, it has allowed error to run rampant. So, and then the last, and this is all, I'm basing this all on Science and Health. This is what Mrs. Eddy says. The last, that this era is perpetually close upon the heels of harmony. So what does that mean?
That means when Mrs. Eddy was able to do all those beautiful healings instantly, and then her students were, then all of a sudden things didn't go as well, because error was trying to keep up with and destroy the work that Mrs. Eddy was doing.
Thank you very much. Very good example.
Can't and release your watch.
Thank you.
There is harmony, there is good, but there's also the need to be watchful.
I think that's why she said one of the things she regrets is how her students hadn't learned how to handle animal magnets.
Yes, yes. It's essential. And if you don't want to handle it, then go somewhere else. Go back to your branch church. But you can't be a warrior for Christ unless you're willing to do this work. And it brings you the greatest peace, the greatest joy there ever could be. I used to just be anxious constantly because I wasn't handling animal magnetism. Now I'm not. And I can see it for what it is. And so I'm continually happy. I see what's going on. I'm not all upset with this or now I'm so upset with everything. No, I see what's going on. I see God working, and I'm very happy. But I have many nights I'm up working, but I'm still happy. It's not horrible work. It's joyful work.
And another thing it means is that as you grow, as God reveals truth to you in your experience, as you prove these things in your life, the devil's not going to be happy. It's going to try you. It's going to try to make you doubt that the truth that you are learning is really true. It's going to try to pull you back in any way that it can. And it will often come through people that you are closest to in your own family.
Exactly. Thank you.
And one of the other examples of it is the New Age healing, because in studying and looking at the roots of things like the Pentecostal, that never came into being. The Pentecostal church never came into being until Mrs. Eddy had already discovered Christian Science, and Unity was an offshoot of somebody who had been healed through Christian Science and then deviated away. So yes. There again is another perfect example.
Yes. And they make it, my understanding of the New Age, there's less, there's not giving yourself for Christ, not bearing the cross. I mean, Mrs. Eddy talks about it in her article in Retrospection and Introspection called Faith Cure, which we have referred to many times.
And the one thing that's missing is, well, two things that it's missing. It doesn't teach you to love divinely. It doesn't get rid of selfishness, pride. And the other thing is, it doesn't teach you anything about handling animal magnetism. It leaves you defenseless.
And the nothingness of evil, the nothingness of matter, and this is the main thrust in Christian Science. So it deviates sharply. Now, Gary's going to read, because what Kratzer says in this about this one verse is very important too. Here, there.
This is Kratzer. The dragon suggests to us an animal of a crocodile or alligator order. The tail of such animals is a seat of great power and is their chief fighting weapon. So the power of this dragon to seduce men is represented as located in his tail. The dragon is, of course, the whole body of false belief, general mortal mind acting as a unit, the devil and Satan. Quote, as John himself declares in verse 9 of this chapter, the stars of heaven are those who have attained repute for learning and wisdom, and have been regarded as leading lights or authorities among men. The symbol may connote both atheistic or materialistic scientists and philosophers, and still others who are professors of Christianity. Though all these may be for a time sincere in their beliefs and teachings, The devil is represented as deceiving and seducing a large part of them, drawing them into the service of their lower natures, and thus casting them to the earth, that is, into materiality, sensuality, and wickedness. The devil will continue to do this during the period of apparent satanic ascendancy.
So you see, as we do see, many organizations, many things may start out with the best of intentions. But then something happens. And mainly what happens is the watches stop. They'll go to sleep. And then it does. And we see people falling, all kinds of people in various places in government or in the news media, where they're taken down by having the dragon seduce them. This is why also in the letter, the Dixon letter, and I'd love to quote it, where he says, "Only the pure in heart and purpose and the honest can really withstand the swollen dragon of these days. With self-will, greed, and hypocrisy in one's heart, one cannot be free from those mental qualities from without. Such as these are easy tools for the devil. It is the lamb that plays the wolf. It is the innocence and honesty and goodwill toward men that detect, check, and destroy the hypocrisy and lust that would swallow up the Christ in this age. However, the lamb can never be slain, for it is spiritual and real. Animal magnetism will finally disappear from the face of the earth, for it is not real and it has no true power. Because the Christ was never crucified, Christian Science can never be destroyed. It is destined to rule the world. Animal magnetism may delay the inevitable effect of the second coming of the Christ, but it can never prevent it from fulfilling finally the destiny of destroying animal magnetism. The time of this fulfilling depends upon what?
Christian Scientists.
Christian Scientists.
Thank you very much.
What?
Anyway, so that's a beautiful, beautiful quote, and I would just like to rush into the next question, if that's okay, because I think that's a huge part of the solution. What does it mean, quote, to rule all nations with a rod of iron, unquote? What is the rod of iron?
So it says it's an inflexible rule of truth and good. Inflexible.
Thank you.
And the other strong words too: imperatively, absolutely, and finally, Christ rule.
Now this is Eddie. God's idea will eventually rule all nations and peoples, imperatively, absolutely, finally, with divine science. And you know, this gets to me every time I read it. This immaculate idea, represented first by man, and according to the Revelator, last by woman. Why does she say according to the Revelator, last by woman?
Because the revelation was given to John, and that was by Christ Jesus, and he told the facts the way they were going to be, and then the last revelator is Mrs. Eddy.
Yes, and by saying according to the Revelator, I mean, she could just leave that out and just say last by woman. She's deferring.
She's impersonalizing
yes.
the whole thing.
It's her modesty. Her modesty is according to the Revelator was last by woman. I didn't say it. I'm not quoting myself. It's a form of modesty and her humbleness.
Well, it also gives divine authority.
Yes, yes,
yeah.
it does.
And she defers the authority to the Revelator, which is humble.
Right.
And it represented first by man is Jesus.
That's right. Christ Jesus.
And Christ Jesus told his disciples when prophecy was fulfilled. So it would make sense that he tells us too.
I'd like to add something interesting that goes with this. And when you go into question 3, it talks about the 1,203 days. And in Kratzer on page 255, he makes a side note to a Bible commentary called the Self-Interpreting Bible. And in it, they talk about these years lasting from AD 606 to AD 1866. And I found the book, and it does make that notation in it. And I just thought it was interesting, because then that would be when the Mrs. Eddy discovered Christian Science.
Thank you very much.
And the other thing that's very important is that this comes from the prophecy of Daniel, and he gave 3 dates, and the next one was another, I think, 30 years, which actually comes to when the church manual was first published or written. And according to Bliss Knapp on page 168 of the Destiny of the Mother Church, that the rod of iron, he very much correlates that with the church manual, as does Alice Orgain.
Well, it all goes together, doesn't it?
Beautifully.
Truth in the textbook. We have the truth for the organization in the manual, and the kiss of death for anything that starts out right is to humanize it, isn't it? Humanize it, materialize it, to worship the organization instead of the message that it represents. Worship the messenger instead of the message that the messenger brings.
Yes, had the board of directors professed this prophecy and given it to the Christian Scientists, the Christian Science Organization, where would the world be today? Such wonder.
Thank you. I felt that first verse was too important. I know I stayed on that for the majority of this class, but it was very important that those...
We understand what the...
Oh, it was beautiful and perfect, and thank you very much. We were just backing up everything you said with the dates, so thank you.
Oh, no, I understand. Thank you. And I don't know if I know you were trying to end the Revelation discussion today, but if we need to discuss it more, we can, or there's Mike, whatever other people want to add, they can.
Well, there's no time limit for
there's
how many sessions it takes.
And I know Jeremy has wanted to have a class on the Dixon letter, but I've been combining it because the Dixon letter is actually on Revelation 12.
Right, they are about the same thing.
They are.
I see some things I definitely don't agree with in the Dixon letter. So take that or leave it, what I just said.
Okay, well,
but getting back to continuing, that's entirely up to what everybody else wants to do. I'm game for it, or somebody else can also do it. And there's so much to cover. I really appreciate, because I was going to read the paragraphs, Mrs. Singletary, that you covered so nicely. And but I just wanted to end with the 10 positive affirmations, which we did. So I'm happy with that.
Well, why don't you schedule the next one, Mike? You're doing good.
it's an endless topic, so I always think, well, what will we say? There's something more.
Well, it's beautiful timing, really, for the lesson this week, because when you go into the last question, it talks about the accuser of our brethren is cast down, and the comforters come to to destroy the accuser, which is Christian Science. And this is all the topic we're talking about and what it's come to destroy, what we just discussed this whole hour.
Thank you, yes. And that old serpent that whispers in your ear and accuses you day and night, day and night, day and night. Finally, science shuts it up, destroys it with the truth. A wondrous thing that is.
And where does this destruction take place?
In your thinking.
In your own mind.
In your own consciousness, yes. That's why each one of us has total responsibility for this battle. The battle takes place within each one of us.
And that is a beautiful 11th affirmation. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, actually, too, because you brought it around to all the stuff she brought out that we need to destroy. It's not out there. This clarifies it even more beautifully to me. That is, we have to know this stuff so we can destroy it in thought. So thank you.
And that's all where the battle takes place.
I think that's why it says that we should be happy to be destroying the errors that come to us, because it's collectively destroying this whole thing, the error of it. So.
Thank you, Florence. And that is the only way we can be happy, is if we destroy the error in our own consciousness. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Just thank you, everyone, for all these wonderful things to work with, because instead of being fearful and trembling in our boots, it really gives us the weapons to attack and destroy this evil that is nothing and God is all.
That's exactly right.
I wanted to just put in one little advertisement here, and I don't know how many okay. Everybody should read Bliss Knapp's Destiny of the Mother Church, because he is absolutely wonderful on prophecy. He's wonderful on why we need the church, and I'm not saying a building, church triumphant. And what's really wonderful is the way he always has citations from Mrs. Eddy's writings in the Bible to back up what he says, and it really ties so much of this together. And I would recommend everybody to read that. And that's why there was such opposition to getting it out there, and they wouldn't have done it. So it's very thankful that there was this huge pile of money that they suckered in for, because it got the Destiny of the Mother Church out there, at least, so people who have the interest can read it.
Wonderful, thank you. Yes, yeah, very true. Anything that meets with a great opposition, we're taught here, the greater the opposition, the greater the good. So you take note of that. Error doesn't want good to succeed. So
thank you, Mike.
Yeah, that was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you all.